When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com.
If you're a Miami sports fan, then there's only one store to go to, and that's Caneswear at Miami Fanwear in Davie. They're your one-stop shop for all your Inter Miami CF, Canes, Dolphins, Panthers, and Marlins merchandise. They have hats, t-shirts, game day jerseys, and so much more. Located at 2511 South University Drive in Davie, and open 24/7 online at Caneswear.com or InterMiamiWear.com. Call them at 954-835-5597. Caneswear, the spot where Inter Miami and all Miami sports fans shop.
Why is it that you get locked out in the worst moments of your life?
Where are my car keys?
Man, I can't find my house keys.
In those frustrating moments, you need a locksmith you can count on. A. Lenny Locksmiths in South Florida, from Miami to Port St. Lucie. In Central Florida, A. Lenny locks it down in Orlando and Tampa Bay. Lockouts or lock changes for home or business. Car key replacements and programming all model cars. 24-hour service. Call them at 855-869-5625. Go to the website at alennylocksmith.com.
Red Recover now offers a simple-to-use, professional-grade light therapy device designed to help your dog heal and live a healthier life. Red Recover emits red and infrared light therapy based on the same science that NASA developed, all in a soft, flexible housing pad powered by a convenient, rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Say yes to science and give your dog the care it deserves with Red Recover.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
It's time to go around the state and find out what's happening on the college football gridiron, with some of the best insiders in the state of Florida covering the Canes, Seminoles, and Gators. It's the Sports Talk 305 State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable with Manny Navarro from The Athletic, Ira Schofel from warchant.com, and Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Huddle up, Miami, Florida, and Florida State fans. Here's your host, Orlando Alzugari.
Hey, we ready to rock all around the state for you Seminoles, Gators, and, of course, Canes fans, as we give you some of the best insiders around the state about some of your favorite teams, obviously. All right, gentlemen, good evening. Welcome aboard once again.
How you doing?
Good. All right. Let's since the only good news, I guess, that happened, although I got to tell you, we'll get to it as we move along. I don't think things were so bad for the Gators and the Seminoles this week, but we'll get to all of that. But let's start off with the Canes, because the Canes are the ones that came up with this big victory against Vodtech. 20-4. Excuse me. I think they just committed another penalty right now, just a couple of seconds ago. And Manny, for me, I really think that the storyline that's kind of developing instead of living in the past, and I get it, frustrated with certain things that are going on, whether it's the inconsistent secondary, the running game, whatever you want to start pointing at, but you start looking at the Kobe Youngs and the Mesidors, and you start looking at some of the names that they added during this short stay that they've been here, and I'm talking about the Cristobal era. I think that that's really what Canes fans need to see and maybe focus on and say, okay, get the next guy and get the next guy and get the next guy. And now I'll start to feel a little bit better about the team. But I think that's kind of really the storyline that really is developing. It's not so much about the win. It's about some of the guys that helped you win.
Yeah, and really that's what new coaches are supposed to do, right? I mean, they're supposed to change the roster. They're supposed to flip it because obviously the guy who was there before wasn't winning in Miami, 7-5 last year. I hate to remind Miami fans over and over again, but this team was 2-4 last year after 6 games. So technically Mario's got them off to a better start than Manny Diaz did last year in year number 3. So look, I get it. The Middle Tennessee State loss, that's going to hang over Mario for a long time here until he can start stringing together some consistent wins. But the reality is, Akeem Mesidor, a kid who he plucks out of the transfer portal, comes in. He's instantly one of your best players. Daryl Jackson, a kid that he pulls in from Maryland, instantly one of the best defensive tackles in the country. Henry Parrish didn't play in this last game, but
he needs to play more.
Yeah, he's a guy who's the leading rusher on the team. He's the 4th most elusive running back in the ACC, 4th most missed tackles. Good player.
The Rooster literally has crow's feet for hands.
He does. And so to me, you hit it on the head. I think people need to remember that when you take over a program, it's not just to make incremental improvements, but wholesale improvements. And, I did a whole breakdown today for The Athletic, position by position, and people who want to take other people's opinions like Pro Football Focus, right? We do that with the NFL so much. I basically compared all of the current players to what they did last year in 2021 in terms of their grades, snap count, all that kind of stuff. And you can see that I would say about 75-80% of the guys that Mario inherited, plus the ones he brought in, have all gotten better. So, yes, they're 3-3. It's not a great record. But really, it's the individual players are getting better. The ones that are going to be part of this program moving forward. And then the guys that he's brought in are instantly making an impact. And that's what it's about.
Manny, I've got 2 questions for you. A 2-part question. That's what we like to do as sports writers, right?
Yeah.
Right. The first one's really quick, and the second one's a little bit deeper. But the first one is, what's up with Jalen Knighton? Like, is it just the offensive line? Because I thought Jalen Knighton was going to be a star. He was committed to Florida State at one point.
Yeah,
I love that kid, and it just seems like he can't get going. I don't know if maybe it's the offensive line. And then the other one is, does the record even matter this year? Because they're going to get a lot of wins here in the second half. You look at who they have to play, Georgia Tech and Virginia and some of these teams. But does the record even matter this season?
I'll start with the second part first, and then I'll get to Knighton. I think it does matter. It does matter because I think he's got to at least equal what Manny Diaz did right last year. I think if they can finish 7-5 or better, it tells people, okay, look, I couldn't necessarily improve with this roster, but I didn't do any worse than this guy did, right? And so I think that is going to also parlay into recruiting. A lot of these kids, I mean, if you go 6-6, 5-7, don't make a bowl game, yeah, it'll affect your recruiting. I think it'll lose a little bit of buy-in. And then as far as Jalen is concerned, people forget he's great in space. Okay, you go back and you see him, against FSU last year, right, catching the ball out of the backfield, scoring on that touchdown. He's not great between the tackles. I mean, you go back, he was, I think, averaging 3.67 yards a carry or something like that. This year, it's about the same. So I think, yes, the offensive line injuries affected him. But in the end, this is a guy that, to me, if you're utilizing him the best, it's in the passing game, not really in the running game. And I think, unfortunately for Mario, that the injury to Trevante Citizen, the big freshman they were all excited about, they stole from Kevin's Gators at the last minute in the last recruiting cycle. The fact that they lost him, I think, really affected this offense and what they were hoping to do, because he was kind of a game changer. And I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see why it was such a big loss for Miami.
Yeah, Rooster's looking like a scat back more than a running back, more of a pass catcher. You are correct. I will say this: I'll give Mario credit. this will go far instead of lying to people or trying to misdirect them from what's going on. But this week he had he basically said, well, yeah, we adjusted our coaching to what our players are can do. And that I think is an answer to watching Van Dyke obviously air out the ball a lot more than they did early on, where they were kind of forcing the offense that they envision in the future. But right now, that's not the one that Van Dyke can do. And then the other thing that I thought will go far also is no excuses for the penalties. It was like,
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. It was in a crazy amount, and he didn't make any excuses about it. And to me, that's going to go a long way. Instead of you hemming and hawing and trying to talk about, oh, this guy's young and that guy's learning and make an excuse for this guy and this guy's injured or whatever. I think that goes a long way, that you don't BS the people.
Oh, I think real quick, I just when you mentioned somebody being a scat back, for some reason, the rest of my life, I think I'll always think of John Avery. Is when somebody says, "Oh, he's gonna be a perfect third down scat back." That's for the rest of my life. That's what I'm going to think of when anybody ever says that.
Quick John Avery story. So I'm a beat guy during that time, during the Jimmy years, and they draft him, and so he had problems staying awake in meetings. So what he would do is he had these Kool-Aid canisters at the top of his locker. So you'd see him walk in with a big old jug of water, and then he'd go, all right, which one do I pick, right? And we'd stand there and go, and we'd tell him, no, pick the lemonade, pick the cherry. And he'd pick it, and he'd load it up with sugar, and he needed that in order to stay awake in meetings, because if not, he was going to fall asleep and get in trouble. So he needed his Kool-Aid in order to do it. He was a good dude, a terrible draft pick by Jimmy Johnson. But he was a good dude. I think he had a nice career in the CFL, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I think he went on to the CFL and actually have some success. All right, let's go over and all right, so Clemson beats FSU 34-28. And this is the frustrating part about all of this, because we have spoiled fan bases, all three of them. Canes, Seminoles, Gators. And so all the football that's being played and has been played for the last couple of years is unacceptable for all these people. And I get that. By the way, the three insiders also get that, folks. We all know this, okay? So before I say all of this, I got to tell you something. You want something to improve. You want something to take some gradual steps. If I go to FSU last year and then I watch the FSU this year, it's a better FSU team. They fought all the way to the end in this game. You stayed within a score on a team that's much better than you, a program that's established. I don't know how you sell that, Ira. I'm sure they want to, throw spears at you in the process. But seriously, it's a team that we know they're not better than Clemson. But I thought they put up a pretty good fight. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at it on paper at the end. They ran for over 200 yards. They put up 460 yards of offense. They did a lot of good things. What really killed them, what's really killing, Mike Norvell and FSU's coaching staff right now is that NC State game, because that was the game. If you win that game, it changes perceptions about this game. But now you lost 3 straight games, 2 of them at home. And that's a lot. That's just tough for people to stomach. But no, I'm with you, man. That game was so, it just shows why we love sports, because going into that game, you never thought the offense would do that. And I thought Florida State's defense would play really well against Clemson's offense, and they did not at all. They gave up 6 straight scores. So it did not play out the way we expected, except for the end result, which, like you said, it was but if Florida State recovers the onside kick, they might steal that game. And who knows, what people are saying at that point. But right now, people are mad. They've lost 3 straight games, and they're starting to wonder if they're ever going to win another football game.
I'm curious, Ira. I was curious about that, just kind of what the noise in the system is like up there in Tallahassee in year 3. And in particular, this is, his third year as a coach. And where is the player buy-in right now? You think it's still there?
Yeah, I do think the player buy-in is still there from everything we could tell. I mean, and again, the way they fought late in that game, and that's what they've done every time they've had a situation like that. At Louisville, they were down a couple scores and a backup quarterback in the game, and they fought back and won that game. So I think the team is together. I think they're still together, but these last 5 games are going to determine everything about where the fan base is, where Mike Norvell is, where recruiting is going to be, because there's a chance they could go 4-1 in these last 5 games. They could go 5-0, or they could go 2-3. And no matter what happens here is going to determine so much. What you do against Miami and Florida, can you win up at Syracuse, a team that's kind of been one of the surprise teams this season? So there's not as many gimmies as maybe FSU fans had thought. Georgia Tech has kind of found some new spirit under an interim head coach. But if they win 3 of these 5 games, you're 7-5. That's a 2-game improvement over last year. You get a chance to go to a bowl game. Maybe you win that. You win 8 games. Everything's okay. But if you only win 2 of these last 5 games, it's going to be dicey. And I'm not saying they're going to make a change with Mike Norvell. I just think you lose all of the momentum in terms of recruiting and support. And I think he'd be in deep trouble at that long term if they only win 2 of these last 5 games.
All right, so I move over to you, Kevin Brockway of the Gainesville Sun. All right, so LSU beats Florida 14 points late in that game. They come back. Again, I see we never expected FSU to beat Clemson. We never really – now, the one thing here in this one, here's where we're all a bunch of phonies, okay? Because we ripped the hell out of LSU when they started the season. Oh, they're absolutely terrible. But I guess we've kind of learned the last couple of weeks. LSU's maybe a little better than what we gave them credit, at the beginning of the year. And then in this game, it looked to me like Florida was not physical enough. That, the missed tackles, I thought LSU kind of bullied them at times. And to me, that's where, again, this is where Miami, FSU, and Florida, you can kind of tell when you watch these rosters and they play against some better teams, they just don't have enough ammo to go up against some of them. So an LSU team that we were kind of questioning, they got better. And we looked at Florida and we said, yeah, they got a little beat up in that secondary too in that game. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy between the SEC East and the SEC West. And the SEC West, I think when you look at teams like LSU and Alabama and Texas State, bigger boys, right? Stronger, tougher, more physical. I think that's a more physical conference. Now, Mississippi State are a little different with Lane and Mike Leach. Now they're probably more finesse. And throwing.
Do they play defense there? Does Leach play defense?
Arkansas, but Florida. They got the special teams mistake early. And they were scoring with them neck and neck. I mean, LSU's defense was not necessarily playing well, but Florida's defense was abysmal. I'm going to give you this stat: 131st in the FBS and third down defense. That's dead ass last in defense on third down. I mean, it was abysmal. 8 of 12. Didn't force a punt until the fourth quarter. There's just a lot of problems on defense. I think everyone is trying to figure out, is it talent or is it scheme at this point with Patrick Toney, a first-year defensive coordinator, 31 years old, young guy, thrust into his first Power 5 job, was with Billy Napier at Louisiana. They're playing a lot of quarters coverage, a lot of zone coverage. And right now, I mean, teams are just picking on it. And, cornerbacks are given a lot of cushion, and they're just converting third downs very easily against this defense.
Kevin, I was going to ask you, Mario utilized the transfer portal pretty heavily here to fortify Miami's defense, their front four in particular. I know Florida's got a good recruiting class they're putting together, but it almost feels like nowadays, if you're going to fix a problem, you have to go to the transfer portal. I'm curious, is that something Napier's talked about in terms of fixing Florida's front, as they go forward, or is he going to go the high school path?
Yeah, well, he hasn't talked about it publicly, but I'm sure there will be some decisions. But if you look at the high school path right now and you look at their recruiting class, very heavy on defense, very heavy on defensive linemen. Their best commitment is a guy named Kelby Collins, who's 61st overall in the country, a big guy from Alabama outside of Birmingham. Another guy, Will Norman, I think he's from the Maryland area, but he's playing at IMG. So they've got 2 top 100 national guys that are defensive tackles in that class, and that's really where the big weakness is right now in the defensive front. And just picked up Dijon Mustard, guy from they got him to flip from Ohio State, a 4-star corner from Tampa Wharton. So they're going to try to address it mainly in recruiting, but I wouldn't be surprised because it seemed like this year Billy Napier made a lot of good additions in the transfer portal on offense. Montreal Johnson right now is their best running back. Ricky Pearsall is their best wide receiver, but probably didn't do enough on the defensive end to address those issues.
I feel like every time Kevin mentions Montreal Johnson, we're all supposed to sing, right?
This is how
we do it. Right, we're supposed to. He scored this weekend too, right?
Oh, he was. Yeah. The running game, and they were without Osiris Torrance too, which was a big loss. Their best offensive lineman, All-American, probably projected, top 3-round pick in the NFL draft next year. But the offensive line, they plugged in Richie Larn. They still played reasonably well. And this is the coaching staff has done a really good job in that area, developing the offensive line, developing the run game. Anthony Richardson, though, still inconsistent in the passing game, but the defense just doesn't give you a chance.
All right, so let's pit Manny and Kevin against each other. Quickly, make a case for who has the worst secondary in the state of Florida, Gators or Canes? Come on, let's do it. Come on.
I haven't looked at Florida's numbers, in terms of big plays, but obviously I would imagine the Hurricanes have given up more of them in terms of those big explosive plays. But I will say this: I think with Cam Kitchens and James Williams, two second-year safeties, I think Miami's potential to make a quick turnaround there is pretty good. And I wouldn't just say, hey, it's a disaster. It's tough to fix. I think they've got some good players in the secondary.
Well, it's amazing.
How about Kevin there? Is there any salvaging that secondary?
I will say this. Well, what's really amazing is, Jalen Kimber pick 6 against USF, Jaden Hill pick 6 against Missouri. So they show their flashes at times, but Kimber was beaten deep in that LSU game. Hill was beaten deep in that LSU game. LSU's receivers really came to play. Keyshawn Boutte, a guy that's been struggling all year long, really kind of turned it on against them. So maybe it was just a bad matchup. I don't know, but they've been giving up a lot of yards. Trey Dean, the safety, just can't quite pick up the scheme for whatever reason, and the safety play has just been very ordinary to pour this season.
Oh, I think we should just let Johnny Wilson decide. He's gonna see them, both of these teams, in the next month. We'll just whatever Johnny Wilson does, he breaks the tie for us here.
Yeah,
there you go. I like that. All right, Kevin Brockway, Gainesville's son, Manny Navarro, The Athletic, and of course Ira Schofel, warchant.com. Saturday, 12:30, Miami is taking on Duke. Miami is favored by 8 points. The over and under is 59. Miami heavily favored in the money line, minus 315. Duke plus 260. The Seminoles are off this week. Next week, they take on Georgia Tech, and it's announced at noon on the ACC network. Florida also enjoying a bye week. Next week, what is it? Don't they call this the biggest cocktail party or whatever, right? Is that the whole
Not
deal,
anymore.
Right?
Not anymore. They don't call it that anymore.
They're not allowed to call it. Yeah. I call it the biggest Technicolor puke party, actually. If you go out in the parking lot after the game, you'll see all sorts of shades of red and orange and,
Don't want to encourage drinking and,
let's avoid it because there is no alcohol involved in football.
Yeah, exactly.
So Florida's got the bye week. They take on Georgia, number 1 in the country. You are listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network.
You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network. Subscribe to Big O Radio Show on most platforms.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. And if you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. You're locked into the platform truly dedicated to college football around the state. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network.
Friday, welcome back. There you go. The boys are ready to rock. All right, let's take a look around college football. We got some interesting topics to talk about. First of all, one hell of a game that I think either we watched, we were aware of, we recorded it, went back to watch it, watch the highlights, all that good stuff. The Volunteers take down the Crimson Tide. So, gentlemen, what does this kind of mean for college football? Because, you know, when you talk about great teams, whether it's the Yankees or the Golden State Warriors or the Lakers or Manchester United or whatever, and you see the same teams dominating, right? And Alabama's one of those kind of teams, right? Along with Clemson, that they dominate. So what's it mean for a team like Tennessee to rise from the ashes and win a game like this?
It's a great fan base, 100,000 people, and obviously they stormed the field. They dumped they took the goalposts, they dumped them in the Tennessee River. Crazy stuff, wild stuff. But they've been starving for a winner there for a number of years, and I think that maybe that's good for college football. And I think it creates another really great game, which is going to be Georgia-Tennessee down the road. That's going to be another classic matchup. Another classic SEC matchup that's really going to get a lot of eyeballs. So I think it's good to have a little bit of that, see another program in the SEC emerge. I know Florida fans were probably hoping it would be Florida, but Josh Heupel has done a lot and he's a heck of a play caller. There's no doubting that. And he's turned that thing around in a rather short time.
Big time.
I think it just shows you how wide open I really think that conference is right now. Because I look at, I can see a bunch of different scenarios. When Alabama lost, I thought to myself, well, whatever, they'll win out. Then if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, they'll get into the playoff anyway. But I don't know, man. Like they could get got. That defense is not very good. They're obviously making a lot of mistakes. They've been making penalties all year. That's not just a one game thing. They haven't been as disciplined as usual. So they look like a team that I think I wouldn't shock me if they lost again. And then the Tennessee-Georgia game, I don't know, man. I don't know if I didn't think anybody could knock off Georgia, but Tennessee might be able to knock off Georgia. So I think that conference is Ole Miss is a fun team, and they can win different ways. I think that conference is pretty – you see now why the SEC so badly wants to expand the playoff because they've got a bunch of teams. If this thing was 12 teams or 8 teams, they would get a bunch of teams in it.
I think what this does is it puts more pressure on guys like Mario Cristobal and Lincoln Riley and all the guys that are making a lot of money at programs that have struggled for a while and say, hey, Josh Heupel's in his second year. You can turn this around quickly. And especially now with the transfer portal, because I think before our mindset was always, well, you got to give a coach probably 3 years, right, before you can really start to judge him. But I think if Tennessee's able to beat Georgia and get to the playoff this year with this team, it's going to start making athletic directors say, well, what about this guy? Look what they did. They didn't win forever at Tennessee, and now all of a sudden they can flip the switch quickly. And so I think it just, again, this is a very pressure-packed sport as it is. But now with how much coaches are getting paid and et cetera, I think it just sort of amplifies that pressure.
By the way, let me ask something. Let me just throw this out as a follow-up to all of this. Has the transfer portal / NIL, now that you're actually giving the money up front and in public, not behind the scenes and dropping
Or in
bags.
McDonald's bags.
Yeah, exactly. So has that closed the gap from the Alabamas of the world to everybody else? Because you kind of felt like they were at another level than everybody else. But now it seems like maybe that gap is now closing because of all those other factors.
And Tennessee found their quarterback too in Hendon Hooker. Now, if you remember the beginning of last year, they brought in Joe Milton, a guy from the Glades area, right, who played at Michigan. And I saw him play live against Indiana 2 years ago. And I could tell you he was a terrible quarterback back then. So they evaluated that, and they figured out that Hendon Hooker was their guy. And when you have your quarterback and he's playing at that level, that can really take you a long way.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, O. I mean, I do think that this, and Manny's been saying this since we've been doing this show, is that the transfer portal and also NIL is it's just changed how you have to the time frame you give these coaches. But at the same time, I would say this, because every athletic director and every university president and booster president and everybody wants to throw all this money at these coaches when they have that one big year in year 2 or whatever it is. But the guys last year, Michigan State's coach gets a big contract. They stink. Baylor, everybody talked about Baylor last year. Well, they're not very good anymore. Arkansas last year, they're unbelievable. They're 4-3 now. So a lot of times these coaches come in and have that one big year early, but that doesn't mean it's going to be long-term success. So I don't know that we know Josh Heupel is the next big thing long-term or not. It's 1 year. It's great. But I think, Tennessee needs to be careful before they lock him into like a 15-year, $150 million contract.
Yeah, unless you're like in Virginia Tech, because watching that broadcast this week, and they're talking about, that coach trying to turn the program around, but he doesn't necessarily have the NILs and those kind of things there like everybody else. Brother, if you don't have those resources, I don't know. I don't think they'll ever get back to where they were with Beamer ball. All right, gentlemen. All right. There are guilty pleasures in life, right? You escape to the refrigerator in the middle of the night to enjoy something you're not supposed to. Maybe you go watch a show that your friends would make fun of, right? There are guilty pleasures in life. Admit it. A guilty pleasure is watching Nick Saban lose his mind. Come on, you love it. I know I love it. I'm watching him now. He's like, there is barely any hair back there. I'm trying to get him, maybe call Red Recover, get one of the hats to help him grow that hair back. I mean, that is one thing, because he almost feels like he's in this pedestal, and he is shocked that people are reaching up to that pedestal and going, yeah, king of the mountain, boom, get the hell off of here. And they're kicking him off. So you got to admit, you enjoy Nick Saban going through hell.
Yeah, the king will not go down quietly, I mean, look how angry he got with Jimbo Fisher just having the #1 recruiting class in the country, right? I mean, what do you think he's turning around? Huh?
How dare you?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think he's turning around doing now when he's talking to his folks who are in charge of NIL and everything else? I mean, what is Alabama going to do if they don't win the championship this year, right? Like, what is he going to turn around and do in terms of hiring coaches or more analysts or whatever it takes, right, to get back to that championship level? So it'll be interesting to watch how Saban sort of, especially if they don't win the SEC this year, and Georgia beats them or Tennessee beats them again. It'll be really interesting to see how aggressive they are in the offseason.
I honestly thought there was a 5-year window, maybe 5 or 7 or 8, where he would go back to the NFL. I did. I really thought that he would go back, and I'm surprised that he didn't. But, he built his foundation, and maybe he realized that college was his place. But, I mean, he's 71 now. Would he go? Is that I mean, Tony La Russa was 76 when he met, what can he do now? But he says he wants to keep coaching.
Hey, listen. The people that hired Tony La Russa must have been as inebriated as he is. Okay, so let's just, I mean, that one, there's no explanation. And I got to tell you, Kevin, I covered the Saban years here with the Dolphins. He wasn't built to deal with men. You can't treat men the way he treats these kids who desperately need him to get to the NFL. These players, they don't need you, man. Zach Thomas, all these you're talking about like big time players had it out with him because they weren't going to, and I don't think he was going to adjust. You know what I'm saying? Like, remember Tom Coughlin was kind of a hard ass, and then he took a step back and had to kind of adjust. I don't think look at him on the sidelines. Does it look like he's going to adjust?
It's easier. The bottom line is it's easier to coach in college because you do have that authority, and everybody has to toe the line. And even the administrators, if a coach is successful, a college football coach is successful, he runs the city, he runs the school, he runs the city, and you don't have that in the NFL. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in their defensive meeting room on Sunday, because Alabama giving up 50 points. And Nick said, I can't even imagine what he was saying in that defensive meeting room on Sunday.
I love it. By the way, was it fair to fine the Vols $100,000 for the fans rushing onto the field? I believe it's 101,000, some number there. How are you going to control that, dude? I mean, I find it completely unfair. And again, there is no alcohol involved in any of these decisions either. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was going to say, I think the real crime is Tennessee asking for the money, right? Aren't they trying to raise the money to pay that fine?
No, they're doing a GoFundMe or something for their goalposts.
By the way,
for replacing the goalposts.
You saw how this whole thing works, right? You get 50,000 because of the basketball incident. The football incident raises it to 100. The next one, I believe, is $250,000 is the next fine. So I've got the answer, gentlemen. While they're sitting around, they're going, oh, wait a minute, add $3 to the ticket. Thank you. Right. And that's it. There's 101,000 people. They'll gladly pay the extra $3. They won't know.
They won't notice the difference.
Large stadium tax or something.
Right.
They're too drunk anyways to look at the price anyway. Back to the alcohol. So, right there, you'll raise $300,000 and you'll make an extra 50 just in case they tear down a goalpost. So that's it. Just tack it on to the tickets.
My guess is they're going to make a whole lot more money from that win over the long term than the 300 or 100 grand or whatever it was.
Yep.
Amen. They'll be donating new facilities pretty soon with that. All right. Will Hendon Hooker, who, by the way, tied Heath Schuler, the great Heath Schuler, his school record with TD passes in consecutive games at 18. Will Hendon Hooker become a better pro than Heath Schuler? That's the equivalent to being the valedictorian in summer school. No, but seriously, go.
I'm gonna defer to you guys on that. I've watched a little bit of Tennessee, but not enough to say for sure.
How long did Heath Schuler actually play in the NFL?
Right? Didn't you see enough of Heath Schuler to take a guess?
That's true. That's true.
I think Hendon's in a position now. I wrote the story for The Athletic today as far as the Heisman is concerned, where if he beats Georgia, how do you give it to anybody else? If he's got a regular season win over Alabama and Georgia, I think he's in the driver's seat at this point. And you look at his numbers with C.J. Stroud. Stroud's got 9 more touchdowns, but the rest of the numbers are pretty even in terms of yards and completion percentage and all that. I think Hendon Hooker at this point, I don't know if he'll be a better pro than Heath Schuler, but I think he's definitely in the driver's seat for the Heisman.
And Hendon Hooker's more of a dual threat. Don't forget he runs too, and the running yards ones, and he's probably beaten better teams. Although the jury is still out on it. If Stroud beats Penn State and Michigan, maybe. Although Penn State certainly was exposed in that game against Michigan, and Manny Diaz's defense was.
I was going to say, how much credit can you get for shredding a Manny Diaz defense these days?
418 yards, brother, on the ground. Holy moly! Wow.
But sure, sign Franklin to another extension for $1 billion. I don't get it, man. But anyway.
Yeah. All right. Topic number 2. So instead of your traditional powers, let's have a little fun with this. All right. So I'm going to give you a couple teams that aren't considered traditional powers. So give me the best team that isn't considered a national power out of this group. 6-0 Cuse, 6-0 UCLA, 6-0 TCU, 6-1 Illinois, 6-1 Tulane, or 6-0 TCU. Oh, I'm sorry, I already mentioned that. And TCU. Go ahead. What do you guys think?
I'm going to go with TCU. And a lot of these teams have not really played anybody. Illinois hasn't really played great competition. Syracuse hasn't played great competition. Really, a lot of them have not. But I'm going to go with TCU. I just think their wins are a little bit more impressive. Beating Oklahoma State and Kansas, and I think they've got a better resume. But some of those other teams, man, I think they're going to come crashing down in the last few weeks.
I really like what Syracuse has done this year. Dino Babers. I mean, their quarterback, that Robert Anai, the former Virginia offensive coordinator, going over there. They've played really good defense for a couple of years now, so that's not so much of a surprise. It's just getting that offense going, and I think it's good for college football to have Syracuse relevant again. You have that New York area kind of interested in football. That helps things. But I don't honestly think any of these teams are for real. I think TCU, Ira's right. It's probably TCU is as close as it gets to being a real playoff contender in terms of winning the Big 12, but they've got to run the table, and I don't know that they're good enough to do that.
Right.
Give me UCLA, the new Wizard of Westward, Chip Kelly, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's the DTR. He's the quarterback that Florida fans are wishing that Anthony Richardson would be, right? 15 TDs, 2 interceptions, true dual threat. I like what they're doing out there. I think they can win the Pac-12. I think they can beat USC. I think they're that good.
They were really ambitious with their non-conference schedule. But no, yeah, if they could beat USC, that would give them a lot of credibility for sure.
It's interesting. Chip Kelly at UCLA. All right, topic number 3. I don't know if you guys saw this, but we had a Fresno State football coach punch the glass, which was not tempered, by the way, and so it busted up into pieces. It landed all over some fans. A couple of fans had to be taken to the hospital, and he has been suspended. So, first of all, your thoughts on this story? Suspended, fired, how do you handle this situation?
Man, I'll tell you what, in the real world, I mean, he'd probably get arrested and, there'd be civil action. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of civil action in this. It's crazy. I mean, the fact that you caused a window to break and shards of glass fall down on this woman and her daughter, I guess, there's responsibility there. On the flip side, who would ever think you can't just bang on the press box window? Like, I'm sure I've been in those press boxes where speaking of Tennessee, back in the day when I was covering Florida, back in the early 90s, we're covering the game. They had the coaches' wives were like in the press box right next to the media press box. And Tennessee had a big play. And the coaches' wives were banging on the press box window like to taunt us. Like we were like lady, I'm not playing. Yeah. But yeah, you would never think
alcohol.
Right,
alcohol. Yes. There you go.
You would never think it's going to break. So from that standpoint, maybe it's not maybe it's the administration's fault, but man, that's awful. I mean, that's all. And this is one of the few times when you're a coach, be happy you're at Fresno State and not Florida State. Because if that happened at Florida State or Miami or Florida, could you imagine this story would be everywhere?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, to me, who are they going to sue? Are they going to sue the coach or are they going to sue ultimately the stadium, right? It's the stadium that's going to get sued here. So, look, is the coach going to get in trouble? Sure, he'll get a slap on the wrist and maybe he doesn't come back next year. But I can't imagine he'll get fired in the middle of the season. This is one of those deals where maybe you just you get rid of him at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think too that certainly Florida, by the way, is an open air press box. I don't know if the coordinators are open air or not. So you'd be punching into wind. You know what I mean? That would probably be a little better there, Ira. But I would think that there should be some disciplinary action. Maybe make him take an anger management course or something, because obviously he's a guy that can't control his temper. Suspend him maybe for a few games, 3 or 5 games or something like that, and see if he can maybe learn from this, terrible experience. You feel bad for the people that did get injured, but maybe try to give him a second chance of some kind.
Yeah, I think you give him a second chance, but a couple things here. One, he sets a terrible example for kids that you're trying to also, bring along. So that's not a good look. But like you said, a couple games, go get some anger management classes. You come back, you handle it. 2, dude, go to the Ken Dorsey School of Frustrations. Just take it out on your laptop, iPad. Come on, bro. Fresno State will give you another one. Maybe Devontae Adams will, donate a couple there since he's got all that money now. You know what I'm saying? Just don't hit the glass. Take it out on your iPad. That's it. That's what Ken Dorsey would do. Now, in this story, in this article, guys, I got to bring this up so everybody can see it. The comments. Can you bring it up there, Sean?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is the best.
My favorite section.
It said all the glass in the press box should be replaced with tempered glass. It's dangerous for fans. Coach should be disciplined. Following comment. All the people in the press box should be replaced with tempered coaches.
That's a great line.
That's a great line. That was awesome. So
I've never been a big wall puncher or window puncher. I don't know, man. Like these people that do, you run into somebody and he's got his hands in a cast. Oh, he punched a wall. Like, what are you doing? Maybe when you're
Amari Stoudemire. Yeah,
right.
Let me punch a glass and take myself out of the playoffs. Yeah. Hey, Gus Farad, I'll headbutt the wall. It's a great idea.
You better believe when I'm a Mets guy, and when the Mets were playing the Padres and Scherzer was giving up those runs, I was punching the wall left and right.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back for the final segment. Let's preview some of the breaks that these teams are going to take. And, of course, Manny's the only – see, the other guys will be slacking off, taking vacation. Manny's going to be working. So we'll talk to Manny as they get ready for Duke, and then we'll get to see what the Gators and the Seminoles have planned here. You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable right here on the Sportstalk305 Network.
You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network. Subscribe to Big O Radio Show on most platforms.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. I started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. And if you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. You're locked into the platform truly dedicated to college football around the state. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
All righty, welcome back. Boys are getting ready for the final segment here of the Gridiron Roundtable. Let's start it off with the man that's actually going to be working this week. And we'll go, of course, with Manny Navarro. As Miami is favored by 8. Over and under is 59. Money line, Miami minus 315 and Duke plus 260. All right, Manny, coming off a week of a ton of penalties, one of the things that I would always say to it's funny. This game is kind of weird in football. If you don't commit a lot of penalties and you don't turn over the ball, you'll be amazed at how many games you'll be in more often than not and even have chances to win. But when you're not very good, then you can't afford, back in the 80s and the 90s when the Canes were monsters, they could commit 100 yards of penalties and still beat you by 50. Seminoles, Gators, they've been at that point too in their programs. When they're so dominant, they can overcome those things. I saw Cristobal take the responsibility and to lay on the sword for all of that. But you got to find a way to correct that if you're not a great football team.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what happened to Miami up at Duke is you have procedural penalties, right? Like because you had the backup center and Jonathan Dennis. This week you're going to get Ja'Kai Clark back, most likely. I would think that he'll be available for this game, and so if he is, you're going to cut down on a little bit of that stuff because him and Tyler Van Dyke have more of a rapport together than Jonathan Dennis does as the backup. So that was part of it. But really, it's the stupid penalties on defense that is what killed Miami there in the fourth quarter and almost allowed Virginia Tech to come back and win that game. And so obviously, they were playing a great game for 3 quarters on that side of the ball. I think they've given up 8 first downs and like 115 yards of offense through 3 quarters against Virginia Tech. Duke's got a much more explosive offense. Riley Leonard's having a really good year for them. And overall, this is a much improved Duke team. Miami beat them 47-10 last year, but Mike Elko's got him playing much better defense. He was the coordinator over at Texas A&M for Jimbo. So interesting game. And I think ultimately, that is going to be a huge key in this game for Miami is how many self-inflicted wounds do they give themselves? Can they put those penalties behind them and play more like the team, in terms of penalties that they were through the first few games. So I think they'll get back to that. I think, it's just one of those situations. You're on the road, loud environment. You're kind of rattled a little bit in the fourth quarter. You do some dumb things. I think being at home in a much quieter place will make it a little easier to concentrate.
Let me follow up on a question that Ira asked earlier. Mm-hmm. With the Rooster struggling and turnovers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is it time that you just make it about Parrish and Franklin so you can kind of settle in and maybe the Rooster can actually be the third down back, the pass catcher, which is what you indicated that he probably excels at a little better. But if you look at Parrish and Franklin, you can kind of have a little thunder and lightning, between the two. There's roles that can be established, between the two. I'm just wondering, do you expect it to be more about Parrish and Franklin and less about Knighton, or is there somebody else that could end up being in the mix too?
Well, what's crazy is that, Miami picked up this kid from UAB, Lucius Stanley, who's like a 6th-year walk-on transfer who was handling the ball in the fourth quarter of the last game. And Lucius is just one of those older kids, 24 years old, smart. You can give him the ball and he's going to do his job. So I think if the other backs aren't ready to go or they're dealing with things, Mario's not very honest, obviously, about the injuries. We had no idea what was going on with Henry Parrish before the Virginia Tech game. I think, you'll see more of Lucius Stanley. But in the end, I still think Miami goes into this game and probably throws the ball more just because they're struggling as a running game. So I could see certainly Jalen Knighton playing more of a role where he's involved in the pass. They lined him out wide a couple times in this game. He didn't catch the ball, but they had him out there lined up in those kind of situations. So I think that they could definitely utilize him in a more receiver type role and let the other guys like Parrish, Stanley, Thad Franklin handle the rock between the tackles.
By the way, guys like Lucius really have figured life out because those kids that are on the 6, 7, 8, and 9-year college plans, God bless. Yeah. God bless them. They avoid the real world for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I mean, that's really what we all should have done. This whole thing about trying to get 4 in and out, we're a bunch of dummies. I just want you all to know that. Really, we just, that's just not good. All right, key injuries in this game. What should Canes fans be worried about going into the Duke game?
Well, we'll be looking to see if Clark actually gets in there and takes first team snaps. Last week, I think he was kind of emergency, right, in case anything happened to Jonathan Dennis. I think this week he's had a week now to heal. This is a better opponent. You're going to need him, especially after the way you had so many procedural penalties, like I said. And then, Tyreek Stevenson, I know he hasn't played great for Miami, but he's a smart guy out there. He's a leader out there. And I think for the most part, he upgrades your defense when he's healthy. So to me, those are the two guys I look for to see if they're back this week and actually playing. I don't know that Zion Nelson is any closer. That's really the biggest addition I think they could make to this team in terms of big time help on the offensive line. So we'll see. To me, Mario's sort of getting the most that he can, I think, out of these players. I don't subscribe to the thought process that he's failing them in terms of what he's squeezing out of them. I just think, they kind of had the wrong game plan for a couple of weeks there, right, at Texas A&M on the road. They probably should have thrown the ball more than they did. And I think against Middle Tennessee State, those breakdowns in the secondary is what killed them. So I think you show up, you play disciplined football, you don't turn it over, you should beat Duke at home.
All right, give me the quick prediction here. Miami by 8. By the way, it's a sports writer and a sports talk show host. We are not people that you should trust. Just want you to know that. We just have big mouths and opinions. That's it, okay? Do your own homework on sports investments. I just want you to know that, okay? Just in case. Oh, no, Manny said I needed to bet my house on – no, right. Manny didn't say that, okay? So, all right, go ahead, Manny.
Well, I think 8 is too many points. I think this Duke football team is much better than they were a year ago. I think Miami's going to win this game 27-24. I just think for Duke, the tough thing is coming off of that North Carolina loss. They had that game won at home and kind of emotionally a little bit scarred. I think Miami's front four is going to do a good job putting some pressure on Riley Leonard in the end. Miami will just nip by Duke, which is the way I think they're going to win most of their games the rest of this year. I don't think they're going to blow many teams out at all.
Okay. All right. Let's move over and let's talk to Mr. Brockway here as the Gators are off this week. They will take on number 1 Georgia next week. You reported that Josh Brown is going to transfer out because Osiris. Can you dig it? Yes, Cyrus. Yes, from the Warriors. Can you dig it? He just kind of said, "Can you dig it? I'm here. You're out of here." So you kind of feel that's the part that sucks, right? When you have turnover in staffs, this is where we see the heartbreaking stuff, and the kid kind of he couldn't even back up. The backup messed them up.
Yeah, when new staffs have different opinions on players, different schemes too, I think had a lot to do with it also because don't forget under Dan Mullen, he was blocking in more of a spread scheme, and this is more of a kind of a traditional. So it's different, but I mean, he's a big kid. He's a strong kid. I think he'll generate a lot of interest in the transfer portal. I mean, he was a kid that was committed to Georgia and flipped coming out of high school out of Live Oak. So for anyone that needs an offensive lineman, I still think there's a lot of upside there. But you never know. He's from Live Oak, and that's FSU country. It's on the way up the road there. So maybe,
Florida State will definitely be putting their hat in the ring, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's that it's a tough deal, but I think you're going to see more of that. Actually, Florida also had a kid that was part of their class named Creed Whittemore, who is going to Mississippi State. Decommitted, went to Mississippi State and instead, and it'll be interesting to see if there'll be any other rumblings of other transfer. Trenton Whittemore, his older brother, who's on the Gators, hasn't been used much, so there's been some rumbling about him. But we'll see how that transpires in the next couple of.
It's the part that sucks, but it's actually. A good look for Billy. Unfortunately for the kid, he's got a transfer, but for Billy it's a good one because he eyed Osiris, he brought him with him, and obviously he's become a force for the team. So these are the kind of things you want to see. We're watching Mesidor down in Miami, and you're like, okay, Mario, yeah, that's the kind of that's the guy you want to bring in, that kind of stuff. So when you see Osiris, you're like, okay, yeah, dude, this is the kind of stuff. So those are good signs too, for Gators.
Of course, yeah. And he brought in Ricky Pearsall to take over Whittemore in the slot, and Pearsall has been their best receiver as well. So,
all right. So how do they prepare for a matchup that's going to be incredibly physical when this team is not as physical as it needs to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the bye week, you're going to kind of lick your wounds on that. I mean, they've got this great facility, right? The Sevener Center, this $85 million facility. So maybe you hit it a little harder, but I think it's just got to be a little bit of a mindset too. And I think we saw in that first run, the LSU running back 4 missed tackles. They've got to get back to tackling a lot better. And it's really been kind of an on and off thing for them. You know, they've had some games where they've tackled really well. And I mean, this game, Georgia coming up, you would think that there would be, as the true traditional rival, you can make the argument that Georgia is Florida's biggest rival. Some would say Florida State. Maybe some would even say Tennessee or LSU. But I think Georgia is the border one that's been, in the pageantry of this game, you would think that there should be a little extra edge going into that kind of a game.
Adam is asking, has Coach Napier addressed the problems on defense, and is it possible that Patrick Toney will change the scheme?
Yeah, the last time I asked a scheme question, Adam, it was not met with
enthusiasm.
Much enthusiasm. Let's put it that way. No, it was pretty much.
Hey, Coach, you suck. I don't like what you're doing. Hey, are you going to change the scheme? That's basically.
I think I phrased it at the time, and it was during the hurricane week, obviously, and I phrased it at the time of, if players aren't picking up the scheme because there were a lot of coverage busts in the Tennessee game, do you consider simplifying it? And his response was, no, we're going to be multiple. We're going to be versatile. We're going to be, who we are. So I think he's trying to coach the players up to the scheme, but obviously there's a disconnect there because there's been a lot of problems on defense.
All right, we move over to Florida State, enjoying the bye week. Chauffeur will be headed, I think it's Honolulu. He's headed out there tomorrow morning to enjoy the rest of the week. So they'll take on G-Tech next week. Question I have for you, when you take over a new program, but you're in year 3. So one of the things that looks like plagued Florida State throughout is key moments, key plays, key times in games, end of quarters, end of halves. Things seem to happen to them, and they kind of fall apart in those kind of moments. And so whether you call it, whether it's a play call or whether it's a mistake or a penalty, how do you view it right now? Because he's in his 3rd year. So how much do you put it on players? How much do you put it on coaches? Because it seems to be a thing for Florida State that they have brain farts. In other words, for a lack of a better term, there seems to be brain farts in key moments and key times of games.
Before I get to that, I want to just tell you, I've been stewing here for the last 20 minutes about John Avery because I put him on a fantasy team. When I put him on a fantasy team, and he did nothing.
Why didn't you call me? I was the beat writer then, or beat reporter then. Come on.
Anyway,
I would have told you, the Kool-Aid guy.
Not him.
If I had known that then. Anyway, 100% you're right. And I think this is this is my theory. Everybody's got a theory. This is my theory. When Mike Norvell got here, the first year and the second year, they were so bad that they couldn't work on the fine tuning. It was just, man, can we just get to where we can compete with people? So that's where all the focus was. And now you're getting into these games where you can compete with people and against good teams, but the fine tuning needs to happen. The guys need to understand, hey, it's 4th and 2. Your quarterback needs to understand on 4th and 2, I don't need to throw it into triple coverage for a 20-yard gain to Johnny Wilson. I've got the running back in the flat wide open. Move the chains. Situationally, defense. They just got a long kickoff return. Don't try to make a big play. Just play your assignment. And you get a linebacker instead getting out of his gap because he's trying to make a big play. And then now the running back's gone for 30 yards. It's that kind of stuff. My theory is they haven't been in a lot of situations where they had to be situationally smart because they've been so far out of the picture, out of the league of good teams. Now that they're competing, that's where now I think the next step for them is learning how to play smart in those situations. And that's going to be up to his coaching staff because you're right. That's what's killed them in these last 3 games.
Well, and like you were talking about earlier in the show, the last 5, well, you better improve in those areas because that's how you're going to go 4-1 or 3-2 or 5-0, in that stretch is by those little things. Fabian Lovett. Rumblings, when's it going to happen? When do FSU fans see him again on the field?
We got to see Fabian Lovett in full uniform today. He has not played since the LSU game. He was at practice today, didn't participate in everything, but he was in uniform, participated in some of the drills. They still have about 11, 12 days till that game. I think Fabian Lovett's going to play, and he's a big difference. He might be their best player on defense, and you haven't had him in 5 or 6 games, so could be a big deal for them.
would Winston Wright Jr., whenever he comes back, is he going to be a factor, or do they feel they're deep enough there?
That's the thing. He is expected to be back soon. He was running full speed. I do think he's going to be back. He's been out all season after the car accident in the spring. But I don't know that he's a game changer. He's more of a slot receiver. Maybe he's a guy that gets you those tough 3rd and 6 catches or 3rd and 8 catches. He caught 60-something passes last year at West Virginia, but he's not a game breaker. So I don't know that it's like you're going to have another guy that can take the top off the defense.
All right, that is Ira Schofel for you Seminole fans. You go to warchant.com, subscribe and follow. And Kevin Brockway, Gainesville's son, get over there. I think I subscribe. It's like $1 a month or something. It's like a joke.
Yeah, it's very good. Very good. Yeah.
So
sports are all over the state now. You can get me in the Palm Beach Post. You can get me anywhere. So.
Yeah, wherever you're at in the world, if you're a Gators fan, come on, follow Kevin out there at the Gainesville Sun. And then, of course, Manny Navarro for you Canes fans out there. The Athletic has always got all kinds of deals. So great way to stay in tune with some of the best insiders covering the Canes, the Seminoles, and the Gators. That's right. There we go. I almost left it out. We thank Sean Stanley, who masters this program and the entire platform. And we thank all of you for tuning in or downloading the show every single week. Appreciate you all. We will catch you next week right here on the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You've been listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network. This program is mastered by Sean Stanley and Chad Show. Make sure to subscribe to the Big O Radio Show on all platforms. Thank you for supporting us.